Hi guys, in this video I want to show you how I propagate Echinodorus or Amazon sword plants. I'll take you through the whole process, but first I will explain you what do you actually need in order to propagate Echinodorus plants. Well, in here I've got my Echinodorus argentinensis, and you can see it is growing partially immersed. So the lower half of the plant, the roots, everything is in here. So there's quite a layer of substrate in here and a certain amount of water, and much of the plant is actually growing immersed. Not all Echinodorus plants or Amazon sword plants will actually grow immersed. Some of them, and actually quite a lot of them, will not break the water surface, so they will grow underwater. All of these plants are Echinodorus argentinensis, but some of the smaller plants are still underwater, so they haven't immersed yet. They haven't emerged from water yet. But even for those plants, those Echinodorus plants that do not grow immersed, such as, for example, Echinodorus blairii or the regular Amazon sword. For example, I've never seen Echinodorus blairii or the most common Amazon sword plant to break the water surface and to grow immersed. But even for those Echinodorus species, they will still send out something like this. They will send out runners out of water. I'll show you three stages of those runners. So what happens, basically a runner will initially look like this. So this is an early stage of a runner. It doesn't have much. It looks as a leaf actually. It's very similar to a leaf, but you can see a difference. For example, yeah, this is a new leaf and this is a runner. You can see the difference. Well, that sort of runner later develops into something like this. So it grows longer and longer, and it starts having this small little buds, which will then develop into flowers. You can see here a flower starts to open up in here, normally closer to the end of the runner, sort of edge of the runner. There will be more flowers, or the flowers will be more developed. Yeah, the flowers are quite beautiful. They're white with yellow in the center. Well, different Echinodorus species, Amazon sword species, they have different flowers, as far as I know, so they might look slightly different. Well, then this sort of runners develops into something like that. You can see that there are lots of flowers in here. This is actually, this one has finished flowering, so it still has a well-developed flower. You can see the difference. This is a much larger flower than the one I showed you previously, but this is literally probably the last surviving flower on this particular runner. Once it stops flowering, this is, for example, I'll show you the flowers that are basically withering and drying up, and we have zoomed in. This is how it looks like when the flowers went through the cycle. And what happens next actually is something like this. The actual small Echinodorus plants start developing on place of flowers, and this one actually still has one or two flowers surviving, but the rest have developed into these small Echinodorus plants. They're not large, they're fairly small, but they're well-developed plants. The only thing that is missing are the roots. They have no roots. They grow completely immersed. You can see that they're just growing up above a fish tank, no contact with water whatsoever. And well, as fish keepers, as hobbyists, we obviously would want to grow these plants underwater. We don't really want to grow them immersed as house plants, although you could actually. So I will take you through the processes how to adapt these young plants to immersed conditions, and basically how you can create more Echinodorus plants from one Echinodorus plant. Well, before I show you how I deal with these plants here, probably a bit of useful information is that this is one of the ways to propagate Echinodorus plants. Basically, they send out runners, and these buds develop into flowers, flowers develop into small plants. There is another way of doing things is when the buds are still young, you could potentially collect seeds and you could germinate them in containers with soil, and in that case probably you would get more plants, and this method makes sense if you want to cultivate Echinodorus plants on a commercial scale and you want as many plants as possible. So that's when you go this route, and I've never tried it. I don't know how easy it is, and I don't think I actually need it because I get more than I need from the runners and from this developing small plants, so I don't really need more Echinodorus plants. And the other thing to keep in mind that if your mother plant, and this is my mother plant, sends far too many runners, and I would say that currently I have far too many runners. There is also one in here, in there. It also sort of pulls out energy, it pulls out nutrients, resources from the mother plant. So mother plant is growing slower, it sends fewer leaves and smaller leaves if it has too many runners. So all the energy is sort of sourced into breeding, if we can say it that way. So if you don't want your mother plant to send too many runners, you can just cut off these runners as soon as they start developing, or if you don't want all of these new plants. But now we'll talk about how I deal with this situation. Well, I'll also show you what happens when these runners actually get into the water. You can see that this runner here absolutely accidentally got into the fish tank. And what started happening here, and you can see that what happens when these runners get into water, they start developing roots. These are tiny little roots. And the plants get adapted to water conditions, and basically this is what we want if we want to adapt these plants to aquatic life, if we want to plant them as aquarium plants. So yeah, well, obviously I would say there are two ways of adapting your new Echinodorus plants to aquatic life. There is a lazy way, which is pretty much something like this. You essentially just throw your runners, or you cut off these young plants from your runners and you throw them in your fish tank, and eventually they will start setting up roots and they will get adapted to aquatic lives. The disadvantage of this method that I find is that when these things, well, this one is connected to a runner, so it's more or less vertical in the water, but if you cut it off and you just throw it in your fish tank, they will basically just float on the surface, and quite a lot of the leaves, older leaves and newer leaves, they will start growing sideways, and your plant will look bizarre, should I put it that way. It's not going to look straight like this one, it's going to look bizarre, and when you plant it into substrate, leaves will be facing all sort of directions. That's not a big deal, to be honest, but if you want a nice looking plant, there is another method of doing that. So I'll start with this runner here. This is probably the most developed runner I have, although the one behind is also not too bad, but I'll start with this one. So I'll cut it off. Basically I'll cut it from the mother plant, and it is good time to cut it off because currently it's just taking up energy from the mother plant. So what do we have here? We have here 1, 2, 3, 4 and maybe 5. Well, this one maybe not gonna make it through, but we'll see. But these 4 young Echinodorus argentinensis plants are definitely good quality, and they will most certainly develop into beautiful plants. So what we do is we basically cut them off from this. You can cut off the flowers as well because they have completed their purpose, their mission, you don't really need them. I try to cut them off without pieces of stem, because stem basically not necessary. I'll cut off this small one as well. So what we have here are 5 small beautiful Echinodorus plants, one still with a flower. They are fully dry. There's no moisture on them, and they're basically like house plants. And if you plant it like this in substrate, in soil, in a pot on your window, it is going to grow. Actually, it is going to grow into beautiful Echinodorus plant. But if we want to keep them as aquatic plants, normally what I do is I take a piece of polystyrene or some sort of a packaging material. I don't even know what this thing is and how it is called, but you would find it in lots of packaging. I'll cut off a small square, possibly like this. I'll make a hole in the center with a Stanley knife or with anything. To make them fit better into those squares, I'll cut off a hole like this. Not always necessary, but if you can see, I've cut really small. And what we need is just to make sure that this edge, sort of this end, is on the other side of polystyrene. And I will put it like this in my fish tank, so it is going to float. What's going to happen over time is that this plant is going to send out roots because it has contact with water, and then you can basically just plant it into your substrate. It is going to grow. So I've made these holders for other small plants, and I'm adding them like this. Actually, if you have a piece of stem in here left over, this is actually very good, because you can just stick it in here, and like so, you just put it in your fish tank and it is going to float. So now I'm going to deal with this stem in here, well, with this runner in here, which was partially submerged, and I'll just show you for an example's sake how does it look like. Well, this one already has some roots. Well, this is a broken leaf, we'll remove it. Already has some roots. I'll still use the same method. So I'm going to do the same with this runner here. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Normally, well, in my case, most of the runners have between 4 and 5 plants. Possibly they could have more, but that I guess depends on the size of mother plant and a number of other factors, but that's what it is. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one, and the rest of the runners, like this one here, this one there, they are not at this stage, so I'll just let them be. I'll try not to get these runners into water when they're still at the flowering stage, because flowers might go bad and you won't get anything out of this runner. So, and yeah, I hope this method was useful for you. I know some people would say that there are other ways of propagating or taking care of your young Echinodorus plants, so that this is what I do. And if you are interested in how I take care of this mother plant, how I ensure that it reaches this size and it grows healthy, let me know and I can make a separate video about this. But for now, don't forget to subscribe. It helps this channel a lot. Don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section, and I will see you soon.